In this demonstration today, I'm just going to give you a really basic example within ArtCAM Express. Now, this is specifically designed for people who are not really familiar with CADCAM software or have ever used CADCAM software. So it's just going to give you a gentle introduction into ArtCAM Express. So if you already have ArtCAM Express and you're quite competent with it, this demonstration probably wouldn't be for you, but you might see some little tips in there that might be relevant to you. So this is basically geared at complete beginners. So I'm going to try and take it nice and easy and try to explain what everything is. And here you can see what I'm going to be creating today, this ArtCAM Express plaque. Really basic, all from 2D lines and shapes, and then we're just going to cut the part out. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is to just close this model, and I'm going to go back to the ArtCAM Express welcome screen. So when you open up ArtCAM Express, what you'll be greeted with is this screen. On the right hand side, you can see that we have this section called modules. Now this is basically if you wanted to buy a part of the more expensive program, which is ArtCAM Insignia. If you wanted to buy just one part of that, you could add it to ArtCAM Express, so you can bolt these on from a higher end product. So we have quite a few modules on there. If you want any more information about those, just take a look on the ArtCAM Express website. It gives you all the information about what they do. I'm not going to go into that now. So if you take a look on the left hand side, you can see we have new model or open model. And what I'm going to do is select new model, and as soon as you select that, it opens up the setup job dimensions window. So this basically lets you set up the size that you're going to work with within ArtCAM Express. Now you can change this between millimeters and inches if you wanted to. I'm just going to work in millimeters, and I'm going to give this a width, let's say 300 millimeters. You'll notice that the diagram updates so you can see what direction the sizes are going in, and I'm going to give it a height of 300. And you can also set the thickness in Z, so I'm just going to leave this at 10. Now if you want to change the origin or the actual datum point, the 00, you can do that by selecting on any of the four corners here or selecting on the center. So I'm just going to leave this at the center here. The material Z0, this is the Z0 for your machine, for your CNC machine. So you can set this if it needs to be at the top of your material or if it needs to be at the machine bed. Also the model position in the material. Now that's where a relief actually is within the material. Now I'm not going to go into that too much because we're not going to create any reliefs or import any reliefs, so I'm just going to leave that at the top of the block. I'm not going to mess with that, and I'm just going to select OK, and this opens up a model which is 300 by 300 millimeters. Now this at the moment is in the 2D view. You can also switch to the 3D view, which gives you a 3D view of this. Now at the moment, this example, I'm just going to be designing all of this within the 2D view. And if you take a look at the icons, all down the left hand side here, we have design icons, have some measuring tools, some selection tools. At the top is your standard icons like save, open. We also have undo, redo, some vector creation tools, vector editing, relief editing, and you can see underneath all of the toolbars there are actually titles for them, so you know what sort of tools are in that particular toolbar. Now if you take a look on the right hand side, we have project. Now this is basically an overall tree of the whole project that you're creating. Now if you had modules or a higher version of ArtCAM, this would be quite full with different layers, for instance, but because this is the basic version of ArtCAM Express, it doesn't include all of that. So all that you need to concern yourself within this project is if you click where it says Untitled, this is actually the name of the actual piece that you're working on. If I select there, it gives me some information at the bottom here, so you can see that my X and Y is 300 millimeters. Now if I wanted to create some toolpaths, or basically tell the computer to machine parts of my design, I can select toolpaths here, and this gives me all of the toolpath operations down the bottom. And we'll come on to that a little later. Now one thing that I see a lot of people doing is accidentally clicking on the cross there and closing the project, and then they don't know where the tool paths have gone to. So a little tip, if you just right click on the grey area at the top here, or down the side on the right, just right click and then you come down to project, and you can just turn that back on and it comes back. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is start doing some of the design. So first thing that we're going to do is to create some vectors. Now vectors are just basically lines, circles, arcs. So if I say vectors in the future, I just mean that I'm going to be creating some lines basically. So let's create a rectangle. So if I select here to create rectangle, it opens up the rectangle creation dialog box on the right hand side. And what I'm going to do is just create a rectangle there, and I'm going to enter in the dialog boxes some sizes for this. So let's do this, let's say 250 millimeters in width, and I'm going to do this 150 in height. Or actually, let's do this 100 in height, and I want to add some radii to the corner. So where it says corner radius, I can select the radius for the corners. So let's do this 10, and you can see that that's created radius corners. I can invert these as well if I wanted to, like so. And if I wanted to move this to the center, I just need to change these to 0, 0. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that by using an alignment tool because it's much faster. So if I select create and then right click, and it will exit the rectangle tool. Now as you can see, this is not in the center. So if I click here to center in the model, that will place that in the center of the model. Now I've just zoomed in. I've done that using the scroller, the middle mouse. So I'll just scroll to go in and scroll to go out. So if I just scroll in so I can see that. And what I'm going to do now is create some text. Now create text by selecting here to create vector text. So if I select that, this opens up the dialog box on the right hand side. If I select on the font, you can see that I've got lots and lots and lots of fonts available to me. Now all of these fonts are within my Windows system folder, so everything that's on my computer basically that I've installed are showing up within ArtCAM. Now there is one slight disadvantage with this, and that is, let's say for instance I use this ballpark font and I want to type in ArtCAM Express, like so. Now you can see that it's all quite grouped together, so let's just move that out. I can adjust the spacing by just moving that here. Helps if I select the whole of the piece, so you can see I can change all of the spacing like so. When I'm happy with that, I just need to select done. Now you can see that I've got a little bit of a problem here. if I just take a look at the X, now ArtCAM is telling me, because these are red and it's got this little circle, that there's a problem with this font or this vector that I've created. So if I just zoom in on the X, now you can see just there's a little overlap, and this is looping back on itself, this part of the X's, and that's giving me a problem. ArtCAM's not going to machine this correctly because it basically doesn't know where to go, and it's going to gouge out the material. So you can fix this manually within ArtCAM, but I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to show you some of the fonts that you might download from, say, the internet. These have been done by graphic designers who are more interested in the way that they look, not in precision. So be careful of that when you download them. You may need to edit some of the fonts. So a lot of the time graphic designers are just bothered about the way that they look. They're not bothered about the preciseness of them. Now at the top we have ArtCAM fonts. Now these are fonts that have actually been edited specifically for ArtCAM, and you're not going to find a problem with these. So all of these, they're going to work just straight off. So if I select this engraver, and you can change the size of that here if you wanted to, and I'm just going to type in ArtCAM and then press enter and then type in Express, like so. Now if I select all of that, and what I'm going to do is to make sure that I've got that centered, and I'm going to maybe drop the character spacing down. Let's bring it down to around about there, and then when I'm happy with that, select done. Okay, so what I can do with this is center this in the screen, and I know that that's in the center of the rectangle. So I've got this ArtCAM Express text here. Now what I'm going to do is create some holes just to mount the piece. So I can do that by selecting to create circles. And I'm just going to select anywhere on the screen, create a circle, and I'm going to give it a radius, let's say 3mm. So this is going to be a diameter of 6mm, and then select create. Right click to exit the menu, and what I'm going to do with this is center that so it's in the center, and then if I press Alt on the keyboard, what this does, it basically snaps the angle, so it locks the angle to 90 degrees. So I can only move it that way or down, so horizontally or vertically, and I'm just left clicking on this and holding the left mouse button down. So let's move that to, let's say, around about there, and then when I'm happy with the positioning of that, I don't really want to create another copy, or basically create another rectangle over onto another circle, sorry, over onto the right hand side. What I want to do is just to mirror that. So if I select mirror, and then I can mirror that over the model. So let's mirror that across model and copy the original objects. So you can see it's created a copy on the right hand side. So what I'm going to do now is create another circle and just show you a different way that you can do this. And I'm going to snap. Snapping means that the cursor is automatically going to pick up at a specific point. So in this case, the center, it could be an end point, it could be an intersection where two lines hit each other. So you'll notice what happens with the cursor is that it changes. So there you can see it's changing to the tangent of the circle. If I move it further in, you can see that that's locking to the center of the circle. So I know when I create something from there, it's going to snap to the center of the circle. So if I bring that out, and let's do this, let's say 10, click create, you can see it's created that circle in exactly the same center as the original circle. Now what I'm going to do with this, rather than mirroring this, I'm going to copy this. So if I have the larger circle selected, I'm going to press Control on the keyboard and then make sure that I've got that snap point, the center, and then left click, and this will create a copy. So make sure that I've got Control down and then snap to the center of the other circle, and that will create a copy in exactly the same place, so it's in the center. Okay, so that's basically the design done. What I'm going to do now is to start machining this. So what we can do is to select toolpaths, make sure that we've got all of the machining options open, and the first thing that I'm going to do is to machine the ArtCAM Express, and I'm going to do a V-bit carving on this. So basically it's going to use an angled cutter to machine into the piece, which will give me sort of this engraving V-bit effect. So if I select here, this is Create V-bit Carving Toolpath. Now under Vector Association, I've got selected vectors, so I must select the vectors that I want to machine, otherwise it wouldn't machine anything. And where it says Carving Tool, I'm going to select there, and that will open up our tool database. Now within the tool database we have default tools that are already installed within there, and what you can do is you can add tools to this if you wanted to. So if you wanted to, let's say, add a 4mm end mill, you can just copy the 3mm and then go to edit, and then you can change the name of it, change the diameter, and you can also change the spindle speed, feed rate and plunge rate. So if I cancel that, what I'm going to do is to come down and I'm going to use a small V-bit, let's say 6mm 90 degree, and click select, and then that updates here where it says the small V-bit 6mm 90 degree V-bit. If I select this drop down menu here, this arrow, this gives me all of the parameters for this. So if I wanted to change the spindle speed here, I could do that, or the plunge rate or feed rate. I'm going to go into that in a little bit more in a little while. Now the width and depth of cut information, now this could be quite important, because let's say for instance if I had a large vector that the V-bit was going to go into, this would go down quite deep, so it may actually cut through the base of my material, which is only 10mm thick. So if I click refresh, it will tell me the maximum depth that this is going to get. So it's going to go down 3mm. So I know that it's going to be okay. Now a roughing tool, this is basically if you had really large piece of V-bit to do, you could rough it out before you actually machined using the V-bit, and save ruining your V-bit tool by trying to rough with that, because it's not designed to do that. Okay, so when you're happy with that, if you just click calculate now, and it will give you the tool paths in red. So if I close that, just zoom in, you can see these red parts here are all of the tool path. So if I zoom out, what I'm going to do now is to do an area clearance, and I'm going to do this over the two circles here. Now one thing that's probably a bit annoying sometimes is having to select both of the circles. What you can do is press shift on the keyboard, select both of the circles, and then select here to group, and it groups both of them together so they turn purple. And then when you select one of them, it selects both of them. So I'm going to do the same thing for the smaller circles and group them together. So you can see those are both grouped together and those are both grouped together. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is to do an area clearance toolpath. So basically what this will do, it will machine any of the area that's within that particular vector or this circle. So it's going to machine all of the inside of this. So let's select the vectors. It asks me for a start depth, which is 0, so it's the top, and the finish depth. So I'm going to do this, let's say 2.5 millimeters deep, and then I'm going to add a tool. Now you can only add one tool to this within the basic version of ArtCAM Express. You'd need a module to add multiple tools. So basically, if you want to get into smaller areas, you would have to use a smaller tool. But if you had the module, you would be able to do that by adding a larger tool and then consecutive smaller tools. So if I select add, and what I'm going to do is to use a 6mm end mill for this. Click select, and you can see straight away that I have under there all of my properties for this particular tool. Now you can see the step over, step down, feed rate, spindle speed. Now the step down is going right the way down at 2.5. So basically what this is going to do, it's going to go right down to the depth of my finished cut and then machine it all out. Now what if I didn't want that? What if I wanted to do it in steps? So let's say for instance I wanted to do it 0.5mm steps, so it does 5 cuts. So it cuts around this circle and all the inside, then it steps down by 0.5, cuts all the way around it, steps down again, and it will do that 5 times. Now I'm not going to do that because it's going to take a lot longer, so let's just do it at 1. So it's going to do 3 different cuts. Now the tool clearance strategy, basically it just depends on what part you're actually machining. So for instance, if you were doing a rectangle, you may want to do a raster. So basically what this does, it comes across in Y, steps over in X, and then goes back in Y. And it can be the opposite, so it could go over in X, steps over in Y, and then comes back. So it gives you that sort of effect. I'm just going to calculate this so I can show you. So if I zoom in, you can see the red toolpath. So what it's doing, it's going across in X, stepping over in Y, coming back across, stepping over, coming back across, like so. Now let's change it to offset. What this does, it goes around the circle and then offsets inwards. So if I calculate that, you can see it's going around the circle, offsetting inwards and then going back around again. So this is probably better for this particular piece. So I'm going to close the toolpath now. Now what I want to do is to do some drilling, just to drill out the centre pieces. Now you can see I'm not too sure what to click on here. It's all looking a little bit muddled up. So what I can do is, if I select this plus here, that opens up all of the toolpaths that I've created. So I've got V-bit carving, area clear. Now if I wanted to turn off the visibility of the area clear, I can just select this light bulb. So the first light bulb is for the 2D view, the second light bulb is for the 3D view. So I'm not interested in the 3D view at the moment, just in the 2D view. So there you can see that that's turned that off. Turn it back on again and off. What I'm going to do is just select that circle, and I'm going to click here to create a drilling toolpath. Right, so this is just a basic drilling toolpath. Start depth, finish depth is automatically set to my material depth, so it's automatically going to cut through. I'm going to select a tool. Let's do it the diameter of the actual circle, which is 6mm. So if I select that, and you can also use peck drilling for this. So if you're going, let's say for instance, quite deep, or you're using some material where there's a lot of swarf coming off, you can use peck drilling to break the swarf and retract the drill. Now, I'm not too interested in this because it's just a piece of wood that's 10mm thick, so I'm not too bothered about that. So if I click calculate now, you can see it gives me these crosshairs, so that's basically just showing me where it's going to drill. Okay, so let's close that. Now finally, what I need to do is to cut the part out. So I'm going to do this using a profile toolpath. So if I select the outside and select here to create profile toolpath. Now the start depth is 0, the finish depth is automatically 10mm, so it automatically assumes that I want to cut the part out. I'm going to select a profiling tool, so let's select say the same 6mm end mill, and I'm going to click calculate. So there you can see it's calculated the toolpath for me. Now when you create a profile, there may be instances where you want the tool to not actually plunge on the actual finished path. So sometimes if it plunges, it could leave a little gouge in there if you're cutting the part out. So you may want it to plunge away from the material and then come into the cut. This is what we call a lead in move. So if I select that and select add lead in, you can do this linear or a circular arc. I'll show you what both of those are, and I'm just going to select 25mm as the distance and select calculate. Now you can see here that this is coming in here, so it's, let me just zoom in so you can see, so it's plunging off the model and then it's coming across and then doing the cutout. If I wanted to do a circular arc, let's add a radius, let's say 10mm, like so, and there you can see it's created this arc, so it's arcing into the job, so it's not going to create a sharp 90-degree turn when it actually starts machining. So this is probably quite nice for this piece, so it would just arc into it and then start machining. Now you'll notice that these are all being placed on the bottom left hand corner. I'm going to show you how to change that in a moment, because what I want to do is add a start point. So let me just turn off the add leading moves. Adding ramping moves, this is basically how the tool machines down. So maybe, for instance, you didn't want this to just plunge straight into the material. Maybe you had a hard material, for instance, or there's some reason, maybe it was burning. You could add ramping moves. So basically what it does, it goes down in a zigzag shape rather than going straight down. You can also add a bridge to the start point. So if I select apply, you can see that it's added a bridge here. And then if I click calculate now, you can see it's added this bridge. Now bridges are basically, they're also called tabs, to keep your piece in the material so it doesn't fly off and injure someone and basically ruin the job that you're doing. So it holds the piece in the material. It just leaves a little amount of material in there so you can just break it off afterwards. Now what you normally do with these is to have them on flat sides, so you can basically file them off or get rid of them somehow. If you had them on, let's say, a radius like I have here, it would be really difficult to get rid of them. It would take a lot longer than if it was on a flat edge. So as you can see here, this is not the ideal position. Now the reason that it's doing this is because it's adding the bridge to the start point, and you can see here that's the start point. That's indicated by a green node. Now nodes are basically points within that line. So what I'm going to do is to select here for node editing, and this opens up all of the points that are on this line. Now I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. What I'm going to do is right click up here, and I'm going to select to insert a node. So there you can see that I've got a black node there. And what I'm going to do with that black node is right click on that and change that to the start node. So you can see that that's changed to a green node. This denotes where the start is. So if I close that now and just calculate that, you can see that it's added this node at the top here. Okay, so I'm just going to take off the bridges and just calculate this again, and then just close this. Now the reason that I've took off the bridge is because when I finish the piece I want to get rid of all of the waste material, and I'm not going to be able to do that if I've got a bridge on there, because I want to send this to a customer. So if I close that now, and what I'm going to do is switch to the 3D view for the first time. So here you can see all of the toolpaths within the 3D view. Now if you want to see what these look like before actually machining them, if I right click on the V-bit carving and select simulate toolpath, so this will give me a simulation of what this is going to look like. And I'll do the same for the area clearance, do the same for the drilling, and do the same for the profile. So there you can see my finished piece. Now if I go to simulation by selecting it, you can see that I have this depth color selected. So if I deselect that and apply, it's just the default simulation. But if I were to select simulation default under the material, I can change the actual material of this. So maybe let's change it to medium oak, like so. Let's try light oak, and I can add a depth color and select apply. I can change that to red. Okay, so I can now get rid of the waste material. I don't need that. I can do that by selecting here to delete the waste material, and then I can just automatically delete the waste material, and it automatically deletes all of the waste material. Now I can close that. Now if I wanted to, I could save this as a 3D PDF to send to a customer. I can do that by going to view and save 3D view image, and then let's go into my folder and let's just save this as a 3D PDF. Just select save. You can also select them to put a password on that if you didn't want people to see this. Now the good thing about this is that you can send this to somebody for approval before you actually start machining things. So they can take a look at this, they can move that around, and they can see what's actually going to be machined and how it will look before you actually do it. So if I open up my folder, as you can see here, and let's double click on that, so you can see I've got this ArtCAM PDF that I just created. So there you can see this PDF. They can zoom in if they wanted to. They can see exactly how this is going to look before you actually machine this. Okay, so let's just close that and minimize that. So finally what I'm going to do is show you how you can save the toolpaths so they will work on your machine. So if I select toolpaths and then select save toolpaths, it gives me this dialog box. Now basically what I'm going to do is convert the toolpaths from ArtCAM into a format that my machine will understand, and we do that by using a post processor, and all of those for ArtCAM are located under the machine file format. And you can see all of the post processors available to ArtCAM. This is all of the versions of ArtCAM. Now your machine will more than likely be on here, we also have a generic G code. I'm going to just find that. So if I just go to G code arcs, which is there, I'm going to select that. Now, if you are unsure whether your machine is supported, then please download the trial version. What you can do with the trial version is to go through all of the tutorials, as providing that you don't actually change them. You can machine them and you can output this as whatever machine file format that you like. So you can use whatever post processor that you like, and you can see if it will work on your machine before you buy ArtCAM Express. Okay, so I'm going to save the toolpaths to separate files. All of the toolpaths are here, and I'm also going to append the toolpath details. Basically, it puts all of these details, V-bit carving, small V-bit, 6mm, onto the toolpath name, just so I know what they are. And I'm just going to browse, and let's find my folder, which is here, and I'm just going to call this ArtCAM Express. Select open, and then if I select save, this will basically convert all of those toolpaths to my machine format. So if I open that, you can see I've got these 4 G code, which is basically text, and what you can do is open that up in a text editor within Windows. So if I open up the V-bit, and you can see all of the G code, and this is all ready to be sent to your machine. Now, I don't know how you would do this, whether you would do this via a USB, you could even do it wirelessly. However your machine accepts the G code, this is ready to be sent to it. So that brings an end to the demonstration. I hope that I didn't bogged down with all the specifics, and I hope that you learned something about ArtCAM Express. I hope that it wasn't too technical, and if you have any questions whatsoever, then please email us. You can email us at info@artcam.com or online-support@artcam.com. Any questions that you have, then please feel free to email us and we'll get back to you. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you on the next demonstration. Goodbye.